Hey everybody, this is going to be a follow-up video for the last video that I did on the little LGK 2.1 model. When I started that video, I started with saying that I have a lot of people contact me and ask me what's the best sounding speaker, or what is your best sounding speaker that you offer. And of course it was, like I said, easy for me to say, well, in extremes back here are my best sounding model. But there's a caveat to that. That may be the best sounding speaker that I have to offer for this application. And we sell speakers for a lot of different applications. And not one speaker is the best for all applications. There's some that are very versatile, but I need to know specifics before I can recommend you a speaker. I need to know about your room, your size of your room, what your placement restrictions are, how far can you move them out in the room. There's a lot of stuff I need to know before I can say I would consider this or this model that we offer. When I posted the original video, we were talking about the best sounding speakers, and I tried to steer you guys in a direction of it's application based. But what happened was everybody started posting in the thread there below the video about what they thought was the best speaker. They missed kind of the whole point of the video. And one of the points that I made in the video was we made some recordings using this speaker. And we stuck a microphone 2.5 feet away from each speaker and recorded the left and right channels and made a video or an audio file of that you could play back. And the point was to play back the 3 different songs that we recorded playing through these speakers and compare it to the original file, uncompressed, not a YouTube file. Compare it uncompressed. Also reminded that because the way we recorded it, we were down in output in the lower frequency ranges because we set this thing up to where at the listening position it was perfectly balanced. And then the microphone was much closer to these than the subs, which the subs are over probably 5 feet away from these speakers. May have blended at the seating position, but at the seating position we were back further from everything, and the microphones were closer to these, so we would minimize some of the sound that we were getting in the room and let you just hear more of this speaker. So it was a little light on the bass. That aside, compare the tracks. Go back and pull up that original video, and under the video there are links to where you can play the original and you can play the recording from this speaker. The amazing part is just how accurate it is, just how balanced it is. It sounds like you're still listening to the original recording because it sounds that good. This speaker is that accurate. And I challenge you guys, those of you who have good recording systems where you can actually set up a microphone in your room and record the playback of your system. And a lot of you guys do. You post it on YouTube and you say, hey, listen to my system playing back whatever. And you want these guys to compare it to somebody else's recording and somebody else's recording. And there's a whole lot of variables there. Everybody's room's different. So it's hard to compare one recording to another because you're really listening to the in-room response of one system compared to another system. And it's very different. What I want you to do is compare the original file to your recording. Go ahead, make your recording in your room and then play that back and compare it to the original recording. If you really want to have some fun, take the recording that you made, play it back, and record that. Do that 2 or 3 times and then listen to how it sounds. If you got a speaker like one of these clips where the tweeter level is 3 or 4 dB louder than the rest of it, after you record it, and then you play it back and you record it again, and you play it back and record it again, pretty soon you got a tweeter level that's 20 dB louder than the woofer level because it'll exaggerate everything that's different. Everything that your speaker's doing that's different than the input signal, you're going to hear it in the recording when you listen to your recording compared to the original. This is so accurate that I said don't compare it to other systems. Compare it to the original recording. I challenge you. Go back and play those things and hear how accurate these are. These speakers would be great for mixing and mastering. because of just how accurate they are. Look at the frequency response. And I know I left a little bit of a tip at the very top end, and on the original 2.0 version, which is just a little woofer by itself, I put a little notch filter on that and brought it down and made it completely flat. And listening to those compared to these, it's really hard to hear that peak. I have pretty good hearing. I can still hear up to around 19.5. But there's not much information up there. There's no audio signal up there. It's more of your spatial cues and your air and space between things are kind of found up there. No fundamentals are anywhere near that level. So a little bit of a peaked area there I'm not that concerned with, especially on a wideband driver like this, because if you set them more straight into the room, you're a little bit off axis, and as you start to move off axis, that drops out and it levels off. So it's only that bright or that sharp if you're sitting right in front of it, and it's still way up there. So before you say, oh, it's got a little bit of a peak way up there at 15 kHz, no, I know. That's not really a problem. But look at everything else along that line, and it's really smooth. Not only is it smooth, but there's no big phase shifts there. There's no time arrival inaccuracies there to where things are not in the sound stage where they're not supposed to be. You don't get the highs forward and in your face versus everything is there within the sound stage in a way that's natural and in a very musical presentation. And these speakers really knock that out of the park. And you can do that with a really good wideband driver, but it's really hard to get a good wideband driver that doesn't have internal resonances or stored energy or a top end that just runs away and gets real hot. And blending it to this little driver just worked out. It's just beautiful. The little LGK 2.1, these were designed to be a really, really high-end desktop speaker, or something you can use in a small room, a bedroom, something where you really don't have a lot of space, but you want to create a sound stage. You want to create that three-dimensional layered sound stage that envelops you, and you don't have a lot to work with. Even if your room isn't small, you may have a medium-sized room that's a pretty nice room, but you really want that sound. This is a speaker you can set on stands out in the room, get away from everything, and it'll really, really recreate that three-dimensional layered sound field. And there's reasons for that. A lot of it has to do with the quality of the parts that we're using in this thing, but the majority of it has to do with using this little 3-inch wideband driver covering such a wide range. There's just tons of advantages there, and a lot of advantages over your traditional woofer tweeter arrangement, where the woofer plays up all the way up to a tweeter. In this case, this woofer's crossed into the full range driver at 350 hertz. So again, there's huge advantages to one driver carrying that whole range. There's no phase shifts within that range. There's no time arrival issues. Any phase shift is so low in frequency, down where the wavelengths are so long, you can't really hear it. It's too short of a differential at too long of a wavelength. So the advantages are that your in-room response can be more even. And when you're listening to a pair of speakers, you're not just hearing the on-axis response. I know a lot of people just want to look at what's the frequency response. That's only part of the story. When you put that speaker in your room, it's what is the frequency response in your room, and that's made up of the horizontal and vertical off-axis responses of the speaker. And 95% of the time, maybe even higher than that, your biggest reflection spot, your biggest source of reflection in the entire room is your ceiling. A lot of times people just have an untreated big flat ceiling up there. So what's going on in the vertical off-axis has a lot to do with what you hear. And if it's an uneven vertical off-axis response, then you're going to hear those reflections heavier in some areas and lots lighter in the others. And it's more important than people realize. Speakers like this have a huge advantage in that area. And I want to look at something just a little bit here and show you, illustrate to you just how big the differences really are. These are some speakers that I've had in here recently. The Triangle Borea BR03 model. But look at the vertical off-axis. You'll notice there's a huge drop right at the crossover point there. That's because we're taking the microphone and we're moving it up, and we're looking at what does the response do when we change the time arrival between one driver and the other. What's it doing? Is it consistent? Does it have a consistent sound? Or is there a hole? In this case, little triangle had quite a hole. Here's another one, the Sonus Faber 2.5s. Pretty nice speakers. Look at what's going on. If you look, though, going vertically up, maybe it doesn't look too bad, but then look going vertically down. Now we have this huge hole in the response. So anytime you're changing the differential of the time, or the time arrival, from a tweeter to a woofer, whether you're moving closer to the tweeter or closer to the woofer, you're still changing that arrival, and they may not arrive in phase. And if they're not arriving in phase, then there's a hole in the response. Let's look at this next one. This is one of the really bad ones. The Klipsch RP8000F. This is the original version, not the latest version of the speaker. And one of the problems with it was on tweeter axis, the time arrival was messed up and it had a dip in the response. And as you move up, that dip gets deeper and deeper. And then as you're standing in front of the speaker listening to it from 6 feet away, you're missing a huge hole right in the response. Right there at the crossover region, there's a hole. Now let's look at the vertical off axis of the little 2.1 LGK model. As you notice, it hardly moves at all. It's the same over a wide range. You can go up or down, doesn't make any difference. The wideband driver is covering a really, really wide range, so it doesn't really change that much. And the horizontal off axis is pretty consistent as well. As you move left or right, it maintains the same response until you start getting further off axis, 30, 40 degrees off axis, it's going to really drop off because this driver is a 3-inch diameter driver, so it's not going to have as wide a dispersion as the tweeter. You guys just need to go back and play those audio clips and then give me your feedback on that. Some of you did on the original video, and I appreciate that you took the time to listen. If this is a speaker you're even halfway interested in, or if you really want to learn what can happen when you go to a speaker with this kind of design and how much accuracy there really is, not just in frequency response, but in the time domain, I think you guys are going to be really surprised. So go do that stuff. Challenges out there. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a little about speaker design as well as our own product. Look this thing up. It's not even very expensive. This is super inexpensive. So see you guys in the next video.